We are inside a dark cave where you can't see anything until a light is turned on.
Previously on this channel, we learned how geographic isolation can result in some pretty peculiar evolutionary paths being taken, the clearest examples of which being the animals that inhabit islands. However, we've also learned that other environments can isolate their inhabitants just as well, and in a recent video we saw how caves are perhaps the most extreme example of this, as they form pockets of life sometimes entirely cut off from the rest of the world. Though their position hidden beneath the ground has made cave environments exceedingly difficult to find and harder to access, meaning even today the vast majority of cave systems remain undiscovered and unexplored. As such, our understanding of these subterranean worlds remains very much limited by those that we've found. Which is why today I'd like to see what more we can learn about these remote places if we continue looking at them through the lens of biogeography. Alright, let's cut to the chase here. Ultimately, caves are a geologic feature of this planet. If you wish to understand them through any kind of lens, first you must understand the geology behind how they form. Lucky for you all, I've already explained this twice, so I'm only going to give the most basic overview of it here. Essentially, caves form when underground water flows over rocks that dissolve easily, like limestone or other carbonates. The water gradually eats away at these rocks until all that's left is an empty chamber deep beneath the earth. The important lesson here is that caves really only form in places where the underlying bedrock contains limestone or another similar mineral, forming what we call karst areas. With this in mind, we can now apply what we know into a geographic context by mapping what parts of the earth sit atop limestone deposits, showing us the global distribution of karst landscapes. Doing so, we've effectively identified all the places where cave systems are likely to form. Though I want to make it clear, this map does not show us every cave on Earth, but rather simply it reveals all the spots where cave systems could develop. Exactly where and how cave formation takes place within these karst areas depends almost entirely on incredibly specific and complex local conditions, and could never be adequately illustrated through a map like this, so this is the best we can do. My first impression from this map is that every continent appears to feature at least some degree of karst topography, though some clearly have more than others. North America, for instance, looks covered in several vast carbonate deposits, whereas South America is almost completely devoid of them, besides maybe a few places within the Andes and Brazilian highlands. On the other side of the world, Europe also features a high density of these deposits, a trend that runs true throughout Eurasia all the way to China. The northern portion of Africa also appears rich in this regard, although the same can't be said for its southern end. Lastly, Australia doesn't appear to feature very many karst landscapes either, though even just this province here, Null Arbor Plain, is known to harbor extensive cave systems, so it can be said that karst landscapes, and by extension caves, are a worldwide phenomenon. And now that we understand this, we're halfway there. Remember this map, it'll come up later, but next we need a lesson in cave biology. When it comes to supporting life, the most important thing to remember is that caves present an extremely challenging environment to survive in. Without sunlight, there's no energy for plants to grow, and without a form of primary production, there can't be an ecosystem. Because of this, most caves are utterly lifeless, and it's only when they connect to the surface that even the most meager forms of life are able to take hold.
So, if there is no light inside this cave, there can't be any green plants. Then, where do the organisms in a cave get their energy?
The first inhabitants of these places tend to be only temporary residents, like bats or rodents, which use the cave not for finding food, but for taking up shelter in. Naturally, these animals transport organic matter from the outside into the cave, primarily in the form of their excrement, introducing some small amount of energy into the system. From here, the guano deposited on cave floors is able to support all sorts of microbial life, serving as the foundation of an ecosystem. The bacteria and fungi that grow from these droppings are in turn grazed on by herbivorous insects, supporting another level of organisms. If a cave hosts enough of these primary consumers, they can even attract predatory critters like spiders. But this is where most caves max out, ecologically speaking. Well, alright, some also feature analogous aquatic environments, which support herbivores like snails and shrimp that are preyed on by fish or crayfish.
In certain other caves, the largest predators are blind cavefish and cave crayfish. These cave predators are only 4 or 5 inches long.
But even still, we can see most caves can only support 3 very simple trophic levels. No matter where on Earth the cave occurs, this is the hierarchy that takes hold. However, in just a few instances, a cave system has proven so extensive, so long-lasting, and so productive that it manages to support one final ecological tier, that of the apex predator.
All the animals that eat either the dung or the bacteria and molds are in turn eaten by predators or meat-eating animals.
In the last cave video, we learned about one of these such cases from below the Dinaric Alps of southern Europe, where a salamander population managed to find its way into a massive cave system. Here, it experienced an environment with at least some food, but no competition and no predators. From this point on, these salamanders were able to survive by hunting both the critters on the cave floor as well as those swimming in its waters, and eventually came to rule this realm as its mightiest inhabitant, accessing the highest level on the trophic pyramid. From here, the salamanders began evolving as you'd expect an isolated population would, by growing much larger than their ancestors, a clear case of insular gigantism.
The largest predators in this cave are blind cave salamanders.
However, the particular environmental conditions of caves puts additional pressures on animals, leading them all down the same strange evolutionary path. Without the sun's harsh rays, troglobites have no need to protect their organs with opaque skin, and so over time, cave animals lose all of their skin pigmentation, turning into a fleshy white color. In the complete darkness of caves, animals also no longer have the need for eyes, and so these organs tend to shrink and eventually disappear entirely.
Most cave animals have very small eyes or no eyes at all. Remember, we are seeing these animals under bright lights. They normally spend their whole lives in total darkness.
In the end, no matter whether it was an insect, a mollusk, a fish, a crustacean, or an amphibian, given enough time, every animal that finds its way into a cave begins exhibiting this same collection of traits, what we'd call troglomorphism, producing creatures like the olm. And now I'm confident we all understand how cave geology affects cave geography, as well as how cave ecology affects cave biology. So now let's smush them all together and dive into some cave biogeography, shall we? As we just established, virtually every cave system around the world will feature a similar assortment of creepy crawlies, so they don't really reveal much about their environment. Instead, it's really only the presence of a top predator that distinguishes a cave ecosystem, as their existence implies that there are multiple thriving trophic levels beneath it. The olm, for instance, being the greatest known specimen of troglodytic evolution, perfectly illustrates how the cave environment it inhabits is also the most biodiverse system known anywhere in the world. Thus, the best way to see where the most productive cave systems are is by mapping every known instance of an apex predator like this. For example, the olm isn't the only king of the cave known to live in Europe, and in fact there are 8 other cave systems here that feature a creature atop its pyramid, all of which are salamanders from the Speleomontes family. 3 of these, Speleomontes strinadii, Speleomontes ambrosii, and Speleomontes italicus, are all found clustered within the northernmost part of the Apennine Mountains in Italy. This specific part of the range is known as the Apuan Alps, as it has a distinct geological character when compared to the rest of the Apennines, being composed mainly of limestone and dolomite. This has evidently given rise to numerous cave systems here, though judging by the fact that we found 3 separate species, this tells us these caves aren't quite as interconnected as the system beneath the Dinaric Alps, and each one occupies its own subterranean island. However, an even greater hotspot for cave salamanders lies further south on the island of Sardinia. Taking a closer look at Sardinia's karst regions, we'll find a collection of different deposits. In the north, there's a Cenozoic limestone riddled with numerous caves, but none that support a salamander. In the east are Mesozoic dolostones, where Speleomontes flavus, Speleomontes supermontis, and Speleomontes imperialis each belong to their own separate karst cluster. In the southwest corner of the island are a series of Paleozoic metalimestones, across which Speleomontes genii have been noted. Outside of these areas, Speleomontes cerebucensis is only known from a handful of locations in the island's southeast corner, where there aren't really any known karst deposits, just going to show how unpredictable caves can sometimes be. Though if we take an up-close look at any of these cave salamanders, the first thing I'm sure you'll notice is how none of them appear to be all that troglomorphic. I mean, maybe Speleomontes cerebucensis has started losing its skin pigmentation, but for the most part, these have clearly not evolved to the extent that the Olm has, and this can be attributed to a few things. First, many of these salamanders do still occasionally venture into the forests surrounding their caves, so they can't be considered fully isolated from the surface, and therefore must maintain some degree of their vision and skin color. Second, the karst areas they each prefer appear isolated from one another, creating smaller, more scattered ecosystems where evolution doesn't occur nearly as fast, together resulting in cave salamanders that appear more or less identical to surface salamanders. And if you ask me, these all represent some of the earliest stages towards true cave dwelling. Even still, the very presence of these salamanders in these caves certainly reveals the richness of the ecosystems lying beneath this part of the world. Seeing this, I expected to find a similar, if not greater, diversity of cave salamanders across the rest of Europe's karst regions. However, I was struck by the fact that these 9 species are the only cave salamanders known to exist anywhere across not just Europe, but all of Eurasia, and not a single other top-tier cave predator has ever been found across this half of the world, despite there being plenty more potential cave environments. Knowing this, I can't help but wonder why. And I have 2 ideas on this. First, I don't actually believe these are the only cave salamanders to exist here, but rather these are simply the only ones we currently know about, and it's perfectly possible there may be more yet to be discovered from further afield. Of course, I know this is purely speculation, but after learning how few cave systems we've found and explored, I just can't rule out the possibility that this is an incomplete assessment. If you're not satisfied with this, however, my second explanation looks into the natural history of the area. By now, I hope you're all aware that 20,000 years ago, our planet was undergoing an ice age, and much of Europe fell beneath glaciers and permafrost. Ironically, given their isolation, these cave systems themselves may not have been all that impacted by this, but the cold did certainly drive away much of the surface life, including bats, leaving these caves without their primary source of energy, and so these fragile ecosystems that had developed to rely on this energy may have just withered away. Again, that's just a hypothesis on my part, but at the very least, I think it helps explain why the only truly developed cave populations are all strictly found in the south of Europe, where glaciers have never extended. Though I'll admit this still doesn't explain why other surrounding karst areas beyond the permafrost line, such as those in Spain or Turkey, lack such troglobites as well. Overall, whatever the cause behind this peculiar distribution is, I believe our confusion surrounding it reveals just how little we understand these environments, both in terms of where they exist as well as the factors that influence the development of animal communities within them. However, there's one more hotspot for cave biodiversity that may help us understand this all better, and that's found right here in North America. Several significant karst regions cover the face of this continent, so it should come as no surprise that at least 11 cave salamander species have been discovered here. 6 of these belong to a single family, Uracea, with the most impressive being Uracea rathbuni, the Texas blind salamander. Found in 7 different locations all around the San Marcos fault line in Texas, this salamander is almost mistakable for an olm, with pale skin, no eyes, and an elongated body. Clearly, Uracea rathbuni has existed beneath the grounds of Texas long enough to have fully adapted to this lifestyle, telling us it must inhabit a very large, very ancient cave system. Nearby, Uracea tridentifera has only ever been found within the Honey Creek cave system. It too exhibits a high degree of troglomorphism, though it's not quite as developed as its nearby cousins, being notably smaller, though together these salamanders reveal the Edwards Aquifer beneath Texas to be one ripe in subterranean life. Further east, we'll find another large karst province sitting atop what are known as the Ozark Mountains, giving rise to many more caves, making this area home to 3 more members of Uracea. Uracea braggi, or the southern grotto salamander, is only found in caves connected to the White River Basin. Uracea naria, or the northern grotto salamander, has been found all throughout the Salem Plateau, and Uracea spelea, or the western grotto salamander, is only found beneath the Springfield Plateau. Together, each of these exhibit only moderate degrees of cave adaptedness. Uracea braggi has lost all its skin pigmentation, but still has large eyes and a small body, while Uracea naria hasn't quite lost all its skin pigment, but has grown larger, though Uracea spelea seems to be the furthest along in this process, being pale, blind, and a little bigger, but still not quite as far along as their Texas cousins. Further east, Uracea willisii has been found near Albany, Georgia, in Climax Cave, Georgia, and outside of Marianna, Florida, suggesting it occupies a sprawling cave system within the Florida aquifer, which is what has allowed it to evolve a high degree of troglomorphism. Besides the Uracea family, 3 Gyrenophyllus salamanders have been found further north. Gyrenophyllus paleucus, or the Tennessee cave salamander, is found throughout the Cumberland Plateau, suggesting there's also an extensive series of caves here as well. And based on its morphology, I'd say this system has been around for a while too. Right beside the Cumberland Plateau is another karst region, and this is where Gyrenophyllus gulolineatus is to be found. Known as the berry cave salamander, these exhibit only moderate troglomorphism, maintaining a fair amount of skin pigment, suggesting these have not had as much time to evolve as others in the area. If we follow this Appalachian karst even further north, we'll find another significant area within West Virginia, which is where Gyrenophyllus subterraneus is to be found. This too appears to be in an intermediate state of troglomorphism, where it's already lost most of its skin pigmentation but has maintained its general salamander morphology, including its eyes. Part of this karst region extends into Virginia as well, giving rise to sites like Dixie Cavern, where the completely unrelated Plethodon dixie or Dixie Cavern salamander resides. Though just a quick look at these will tell you they've also just started down this evolutionary path. This, however, is the furthest north a cave salamander has been found here, despite these deposits continuing far on into Canada. And I'd just like to point out this lines up nicely with the furthest extension of permafrost during the last ice age, leading me to believe there aren't any more troglobites up this way. Lastly, if you want to be technical, this karst region here in Mexico houses Chiropterotriton mosauri, or the cave splayfoot salamander, but this too doesn't appear very far along in its evolution either. Overall, we can see the cave salamanders of North America exhibit varied levels of troglomorphism, which is really cool because it gives us a glimpse into the many different stages of development these animals go through on their evolutionary journey. But once again, I must point out that beyond this, no other cave salamander has been found anywhere else across the Americas, which is kinda strange. And altogether, the global distribution of caves that support apex predators appears to be concentrated in just 2 places, despite the fact that karst topography extends far beyond these areas. And this is what I'd like to call the great mystery of cave biogeography. Is this truly everything, or could there be even more cave salamanders yet to be found in the rest of these places? To answer this, we need to learn a thing or two about salamanders. First and foremost, I'd like to emphasize that no one really knows why every cave system happens to be crowned by the same unassuming animal. For whatever reason, salamanders simply appear better suited for cave dwelling than almost any other animal and have monopolized the cave's top tier. But I have a hypothesis for this as well. You see, if you're like me and spent countless hours of your childhood searching for salamanders, you'd know they like to spend most of their time wedged beneath rocks underground, preying on whatever invertebrates come their way. Or in other words, the niche salamanders already occupy here on the surface is pretty similar to the niche available in caves, with the added benefit of no competitors or predators. So it's really no surprise that salamanders find success in caves. What's harder to understand is why other animals don't also adapt to caves in a similar way. For instance, why are there 0 troglomorphic mammals? Surely even a mouse could replace a salamander at the top of a cave food pyramid, so why haven't they? Why hasn't anything ever dethroned the mighty troglomander? Again, we don't really know, but don't worry, I have a few ideas. First, we must remember that these are incredibly low energy environments, and so whenever any animal enters a cave, they're immediately faced with starvation, and their survival will now and forevermore depend on how well they conserve energy. Mammals are simply not suited for this, as we spend a tremendous amount of energy keeping our body temperature warmer than our surroundings. So even when an animal like a mouse enters a cave, they rarely find enough food to support their energy-intensive metabolism. Salamanders, on the other hand, are cold-blooded, meaning they aren't wasting energy keeping their bodies warm, which is a smart move here, especially considering caves often maintain the same exact temperature day and night for thousands of years. So regulating your body temperature is a huge waste of energy in caves, giving salamanders another huge advantage. However, there are of course plenty of other cold-blooded creatures out there that would just love to fill this niche, so that can't be the full story. My final thought on this is that being amphibians, salamanders can live both on land and in the water, opening them up to food on the cave floor as well as within cave pools, effectively doubling their source of energy. This might be something even other cold-blooded animals struggle with, so the salamander may have the ultimate advantage here. Depending on how you look at it, salamanders either lucked out or are specially equipped for life under the surface, and as a result sit atop every cave system they come by. However, what still remains unclear is whether other animals are even capable of accessing this niche, and the salamander simply outcompetes them, or if no other animal can survive in these conditions, and thus the salamander is the only one even trying to claim it. Again, we don't really know the answer to this, but just for fun, why don't we pull up a map of salamanders' worldwide distribution? I'll be honest, I was pretty surprised when I first looked at this, as I never realized salamanders are for the most part found only in the northern hemisphere. Being amphibians, I sorta just assumed they'd thrive more in the tropics, but sure enough, this area of North America just so happens to be the greatest hotspot for salamander biodiversity anywhere in the world, and almost everywhere else only features one species. The only other region of the world where salamander diversity appears even remotely high is Europe. And this is a pretty interesting coincidence, wouldn't you say? The only caves that support apex predators are those that exist where surface salamander diversity is highest. Almost as if it's the presence of salamanders that opens this niche up, and wherever there aren't salamanders, nothing else is capable of filling it. Or at least that's how it appears to me, as no other cave predators have ever been found beyond the salamander's range. But I want to stress just how much is still unknown here. Maps like this show us huge areas of this globe are rich in karst features, and yet only a fraction of them have ever been thoroughly studied. If someone could venture into a cave beyond the salamander's range and uncover some other kind of animal preying on the critters there, well, that would be a truly remarkable discovery, as it would literally reshape our understanding of life underground. And I think that's why I find studying the biogeography of caves so exciting. All across this planet, untold numbers of unforeseen worlds exist right below our feet. And once you understand that, suddenly there are new mysteries to be solved, new discoveries to be made, and new frontiers left to be explored.
In some ways, the whole world is like a cave. Both the Earth and a cave get just so much energy from the outside. But the things that scientists learn from studying a simple cave community help them understand the more complicated communities in forests, grasslands, lakes, and other places.